You should now see your one-page document in the document window under a tab named Untitled Dash and Some Number, then the @ symbol and a percentage, with a X over at the far right of the tab. Let's break down what that information in the tab means. The Untitled Dash and Some Number means that the file hasn't been saved yet. The @ symbol and percentage show the display view percentage, like a zoom size for the page. That's also available here in the center of the menu bar. And don't click on that X to the right side of the tab unless you want to close the document window. So let's save this file. Go to the File, Save menu command. The keyboard shortcut for that is Command S if you're on a Mac, Control S on a Windows PC. This will probably be the first shortcut you memorize for InDesign if you haven't memorized it already. I'm going to click that command, which will open the Save As dialog box. We'll talk more about this in the next chapter of our InDesign course. But what we'd like to do is save this file, so if you would navigate your way to the desktop, double-click on the Project Files InDesign CS6 Essentials folder. Then double-click on the Chapter 01 subfolder and name your file. In this case, I'm going to use my first name, Randy, and the number 1, and click the Save button to save my class file in the Chapter 01 subfolder. Before we get to working with this, let's talk about the page we see in our document window, with the default colors of purple for the page margins, black with a drop shadow for my page size, red for the bleed area that we specified, and a light blue for the slug area that we set underneath the bottom of our page. Now, before we start working with that toolbox to the left of our document window and the tools that sit inside it, let's take a quick trip around the InDesign CS6 application workspace. At the top are the menu bar, which contains the pull-down menu commands that you can use for working with InDesign, as well as a search window, icons for opening up Adobe Bridge, and Windows settings for the InDesign application workspace. Beneath that, just above our document window, is the control panel. We'll talk about working with that later in this chapter of our InDesign course. To the right is the side dock. The side dock actually contains a series of panels that we can use for working with InDesign. We'll work with the side dock in this chapter too, after we talk about working with the control panel. Now, let's return to the toolbar at the left of our document window. At the top of the toolbar is a dark gray beveled box with two pointed triangles on it. If you click on those two triangles, what it does is it toggles the toolbox between the single column and double column formats, like this and this. The first set of tools in the toolbox, the 5 tools that are at the top of the toolbox in a single column layout, or 6 if you're in a double column layout, are what are known as our selection tools. The top 2, the ones with the arrows in them, are the selection tool and the direct selection tool. Before we can show what these selection tools can do, we need to get something to select. We're going to do that by placing a text file into our document page. Select the File, Place command in your pull-down menu. Notice if you're on the Mac that the keyboard shortcut is Command D. On the Windows PC, as we're demonstrating here, the keyboard shortcut is Control D. You'll probably memorize this keyboard shortcut quickly because that's the fastest way to bring text and graphic elements from other programs into InDesign. I'll click on that command now. We'll discuss what you see in the Place dialog box here in the next chapter of our InDesign CS6 course. But for now, if you don't see it already, navigate your way to the desktop to where you'll see the Project Files InDesign CS6 Essentials folder. Then open up the Chapter 01 subfolder, as we have right here. Double-click on the Class Sample Copy 1.txt file. Double-clicking on something with InDesign tells the program to select that thing and do it. When the Place dialog box disappears, your cursor turns from an arrow into a page symbol with the starting words of your text file next to it. This is what's known as the paste gun. Move that page icon to the upper left corner of the page margins, like this. Then click the single mouse button on your Mac, or left mouse button on a Mac or Windows PC with a 2-button or more button mouse. This places a text frame in the page margin area with 4 paragraphs of sample text. At each corner of the text block, as well as in the lines between each of those corners, are little squares that are known as anchor points. Click on that top tool button, the one with the black arrow on it. That's known as our selection tool. Your selection black arrow tool lets you select things, move things, and adjust the amount of space that things take up. That's all the selection tool does, and only the selection tool does that. Let's show how that works by moving your cursor down to the lower left corner of the text frame. If it's not already selected, click inside the margins to highlight the anchor points. Move your cursor to the lower right corner anchor point like this. You'll know you get there because a diagonal double arrow will appear just like you see with this cursor. Hold the mouse button down and drag the frame up so it takes up the upper left quarter of your document page. Then move your cursor to the center of the text frame. Hold the mouse button down and move the entire text frame to the center of the page. You'll know you'll get there because these pink smart guides help you perfectly center the text frame in your InDesign document page. When you get to this spot, release the mouse button and you'll have moved that into the center of the frame. Now let's make a mistake. With your text frame selected, press the delete key. Whoops! I changed my mind. I didn't want you to do that. That was our intentional mistake. Select the Edit, Undo Clear menu command. The keyboard shortcut for that is Command-Z for the Mac, Control-Z on the Windows PC. Selecting that command will bring our text frame back. InDesign has multiple undos, back to the last time you saved your document file. You'll likely remember this keyboard shortcut pretty quickly too, because undo is your friend. Back to the selection tools. We've just demonstrated what can be done with the selection tool. We can select things, like this. We can move things around. Let me move this back to the center where I wanted it to be. And we can adjust the amount of space that things take up. Remember, that's all the selection tool does, and only the selection tool does that. Now let's click on the direct selection tool. That's the second one from the top, the one with the white arrow in that frame. Once we select that tool, move off the screen and click the mouse button outside of the page. Remember this. Whenever you don't want to have anything selected with either arrow tool, just click somewhere there's absolutely nothing and everything will be deselected. Click on the text frame again to reselect it with the direct selection tool. This is important. When you change between selection tools, InDesign will remember some of the attributes from the selection done with the previous tool. You avoid that by first deselecting, then reselecting the element that you want to work with. Notice now that there are only 4 anchor points, one at each corner of our text frame. Move your cursor to the lower right corner of the frame. When your cursor is on the anchor, you'll know it because a little box shows up next to the cursor. Hold the mouse button down and drag it to the right. Notice that just that anchor point moves and changes the shape of the text frame. Now put your cursor on the line between the 2 right anchor points. You'll know when you get there because a line will now show up next to the cursor. Hold the mouse button down and drag that line around. Notice that now that segment floats free, but the other two anchor points don't move. Press Command-Z on your Mac or Control-Z on your Windows PC to undo your Direct Selection tool's actions until you return to the rectangular text frame in the center of your page. Then use Command-S or Control-S shortcut to save your work. The third tool from the top in that single column format is the Page tool. It lets us adjust the size of a page the same way we were adjusting elements on these pages. The fourth tool is the Gap tool. It lets you adjust the size of two adjoining elements while maintaining the same gap between them. The fifth tool in a one-column toolbox, or the fifth and sixth tool in a two-column layout, contain the Content Collector and the Content Placer tools. They let you pick up multiple items in one place with InDesign and put them all somewhere else in InDesign documents. On a one-column layout, that Document Placer tool is hidden, but if you put your cursor on the button and hold the mouse button down, it'll allow you to see where both of those are available. We'll talk about these other selection tools in later chapters of our InDesign course. But you master the basic function of InDesign by understanding how the selection and direct selection tools work. Those tools let you arrange and size elements on a page exactly the way you want them.